Hi everyone, welcome to the Diminished guitar. In this first video I just wanted to introduce the Diminished guitar, explain why I made it, and why I think it's a really great tool for starting to learn Barry Harris concepts and metaharmony. So everything I'm doing is really inspired ultimately by Barry Harris. Barry Harris was an amazing improviser, composer, and educator. He developed all kinds of harmonic and melodic systems, and specifically his diminished scales way of thinking about adding movement to chords has really resonated with me, and so I'm just starting to explore it. Almost everything I learned about Barry Harris so far has come from Chris Park's YouTube channel called Things I've Learned from Barry Harris, and Thomas Eccles' YouTube channel called Labyrinth of Limitations, so check out the links in the description. And more recently, I stumbled upon the Metaharmony channel by Tom Glazebrook. Tom was also inspired by Barry Harris and has made this really simplified system that has resonated with me and helped me find a way into this system. I highly recommend checking it out. He made a sort of color metaphor for understanding harmony, and it seems simple at first, but it goes extremely deep. And definitely the colors are the chief inspiration behind this guitar. So the idea with this guitar was to tune in minor thirds. So I started with an A, and go to a C, E flat, G flat, A, and then C again. Turn off that effect. And so if you play all of the open notes, you get a fully diminished chord. And if you look at the tuning diagram below me, you can see that this yields a really smushed together tuning compared to regular tuning. In normal tuning, strings are a perfect fourth apart. And so really like all of these strings fit within the middle four strings of a normal guitar. And that lets you play all kinds of close together voicings that would be hard to play on a guitar that are more typical for like a piano. So things like so that's really fun to explore on this guitar. But the chief reason for tuning this way was to organize the notes so that each fret corresponds to a different diminished chord. So what you'll see is if you try to make a diminished chord off of every note out of the 12 notes, you'll find that you can only make 3 unique chords. So if you have a C diminished, it has the notes C, A, E flat, and G flat. G has G, E, D flat, and B flat. And then the D diminished has D, B, F, and A flat. If you try to make a diminished off of A, you'll find it's the same notes off of the C diminished again. And Tom Glazebrook at Metaharmony had the idea to call each of these diminished a primary color. So there's the yellow, the red, and the blue diminished. I put stickers on this guitar so that I could tell which diminished I was playing when I was on any fret. So if I'm on a yellow fret, I know I'm playing the notes C, E flat, G flat, and A. Organizing the notes this way makes it really easy to explore Barry Harris' genius idea of describing a bunch of 4-note chords as combinations of 2 adjacent diminished chords. So if I have a C diminished, and I want to combine the notes of C diminished and G diminished, I can build all of these different kinds of C chords. So C diminished. If I start changing the voices of the notes besides C to red diminished notes, like the G diminished, I can build all of these chords. So C minor 7 flat 5 is built when I change the A to a B flat. If instead I change the G flat to a G, I get a C minor 6 chord. If I move more than one voice, you can move 2 voices that are next to each other in the diminished. And if you do that with the E flat and the G flat, you can get a C6. And if instead you move the G flat and the A up, you get a C minor 7. Now Barry people would call C minor 7 E flat 6. It's all the same notes as E flat 6, and it sort of simplifies things to always think about chords as major 6 chords when you can. Similarly, for the C minor 7 flat 5, they would call that E flat minor 6. If instead of moving two adjacent notes up, you can move two non-consecutive notes up and get a dominant 7 flat 5 chord. That's a C dominant 7 flat 5. And if you move all three voices besides the C up, you get a C dominant 7 chord. So organizing the notes this way makes it really easy for me to find all those chords and understand how they come together from those two diminished chords. I'm just combining notes from the yellow and the red fret. So if you just trace the paths that we just took from the C diminished to the red diminished, the G diminished, you can see by moving one voice at a time, we make all these different chords. So C minor 6, I drew here as an up triangle because we move one note up, and it's a little bit closer to red, but it's not all the way there yet, so it's still quite yellow. So that was moving the G from a G flat. If we then move the E flat to an E, we get a C6. If then instead you move the A to a B flat, you get an E flat 6. So you have two lines coming from the C minor 6, linking those chords. And then you can move that last voice besides the C to get a C7. And if you finally move the C up itself, you get the red diminished. All of these chords share something in common, which is that they didn't use any blue notes. And so Barry Harris's scales of chords come from combining these chords that are made from, let's say, the red and the yellow diminished with the blue diminished that wasn't used, which in meta harmony would be the complementary diminished, because blue is complementary to orange. When you do that, when you make a scale like that, you get a scale that has built-in tension and release. So let me show you what I mean. If we have the C6 chord, and that's sort of our home for this moment in the music, if we combine those four notes with the four notes from B diminished, we can build a scale where each blue note points to the orange note, and you get tension and release. So you can do that not just for C, but for every note from every diminished. And you would end up with this hairball here, where you see all of these different orange chords, which are combinations of yellow and red notes only. And they all can be made into scales of chords with the blue diminished. Similarly, all these green chords are combinations of B diminished and C diminished, and they form scales of chords with the red diminished that you left out. Okay, so why would you want to do this in the first place? I'm going to show it to you on a tune, Autumn Leaves. First of all, if you were just accompanying someone and you saw this chord chart, this is in the key of E flat, you might be sort of stuck just playing the chords if you don't have a strategy for how to add movement. So let me show you what I mean. So that already sounds pretty good because the chords are really great at voice leading into each other. But you can't really improvise like that. You can't add more to it. You could play inversions of the chords and just move down. Those are big leaps. And so the idea with Barry Harris's scales of chords is that you can sort of fill in the gaps. And this allows you all kinds of movements, not just the big blocky chord movements like that. So in order to add movement to this, what I'm going to do is assign a Barry Harris scale of chords to each of the chords. And I'll try to explain quickly why I picked each one of those scales and then show you an example. So for the first chord, for the F minor 7, we're just going to play the A flat 6 diminished scale. A flat 6 has all the same notes as F minor 7. F minor 7 is just an inversion of A flat 6. So that's the notes from F minor 7 and the red diminished notes. And that's sort of the most straightforward way to apply one of Barry Harris's scales to this. On the next one, for B flat 7, I'm going to play F minor 6 on that. So where did that come from? Why am I not playing a B flat 7 diminished, which you could also play? Well, if you look at the notes of F minor 6, it has the third from B flat, the fifth, and the flat 7. So those are all great notes to target. And it has the C, which is the 9 of B flat 7. So I think I'm starting more and more to think of Barry scales as 4 target notes and 4 leading notes, rather than thinking about it as just a chord. So you can really pick any 4 target notes that you think make sense harmonically for a certain chord, and find a Barry Harris scale that works for those 4 notes to build movement into your chord progression. This particular one is called the 6 on the 5, which is a common strategy Barry people would use to add color to a 7 chord. The reason it's called a 6 on the 5 is because it's a 6 chord, in this case F minor 6, and it's built on the 5th of B flat, and that's F is the 5th of B flat. So this is a really common way to add a 9, which we often want to do. I'm using a similar trick for the E flat major 7. So this is B flat 6 and the yellow diminished. This one can sound pretty far out there because in E flat 6, obviously 2 of the yellow notes are part of E flat 6, but the other 2 are pretty out there with the E flat 6. But I'm going to give it a try. I think it's a great way to add some color to the major 7 chord. Same for the A flat major 7. I'm using E flat 6 and the blue diminished. Then on the D minor 7 flat 5, like I said, Barry people would always call that a minor 6 chord. So it's F minor 6 again. And I'm just using those notes of the chord as the target notes. And then for G7, I'm using another trick, which is using A flat minor 6 with the red diminish. So where did that come from? Well, if you just look at the notes, it has the B and the F, which are the 3rd and the flat 7 of G. The other 2 notes in your target notes are the E flat, which is the flat 13, and the A flat, which is the flat 9. Both of those are really good notes to add color to a chord that's especially in a minor 2-5-1. And because this is so useful, Barry people have a name for it. It's called the tritones minor. So it's actually the 6 on the 5 of G's tritone sub, which is D flat. Then on the C minor 7, I'm just using the notes from C minor 7 and the blue diminished. So that's E flat 6 diminished scale. And then for the final chord, the C7, I'm using one more trick. There's sort of a bonus Barry Harris scale of chords called the Octatonic. So that's on this C dominant 7, I'm including this flat 9 note in my target notes. And then I'm using the yellow diminished as the off chord, or the leading notes up to that red diminished. So you get these leading notes into the red diminished. So the red diminished actually can have movement. Even though it's so tense, it feels like those yellow notes want to move to red notes. Okay, so those are the 8 scales of chords that I chose, and there's other ones to try. I'm not great at this on this new guitar with this terrible action, but I'm going to try my best to apply these concepts to Autumn Leaves Now. Okay, that wasn't so bad, but I hope you get the idea. I can come up with all this movement that would be really hard for me to come up with any other system. And it's really using this principle of just finding a diminished as leading notes into some target notes that you want to highlight. You'll see masters of this will use multiple scales of chords on the same chord. Maybe they use the 6 on the 5 for half of the bar and go back to its root position for the rest. So there's really an endless supply of movement that you can find in this system. So that was exploring Barry Harris scales of chords on this guitar. This has also helped open the door to me exploring metaharmony. So the idea with metaharmony was taking this Barry concept of playing with family, or this observation that chords that come from the same two diminished, so they have the same color, can have the same function in a key. So in the song we were just playing, if you zoom out a little bit, we were in an orange key, and the first chord was green, followed by a purple chord, and then it went to the tonic, and then 2 green chords in a row, purple chord, and then it went to the tonic, and then it went to an orange chord with some yellow tension. And using this sort of map of chords, you can try inventing new chord progressions that still follow this exact form. So instead of playing this green chord, you could play a different green chord. And on this guitar, it's really easy because I know I'm just going to stay on these frets that have only blue and yellow notes. You could play all kinds of different green chords. So I'll just try to make a quick chord progression with random green and purple chords, still using the E flat 6 as my targets, as my tonic, I mean. So here we go. So it sort of felt like an echo of Autumn Leaves in a way, but it was totally different chords. And that was just playing with similar color chords and coming up with totally new chord progressions. So that's what I wanted to share in this first video. If you are interested in more content with the diminished guitar, please subscribe. I'm going to put a bunch of links in the description of all the channels that I mentioned, and also some instructions on how to get strings to turn your guitar into a diminished guitar if you're interested. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.